What's something dumb you thought as a kid? That drinking and driving meant any kind of drinking. Me too. I told the police officer who visited my first grade class to talk to us about drinking and driving that my mom drinks and drives all the time. BC she used to get big 32-ounce drinks every day at a drive-thru. Escalators would consume me if I didn't step off fast enough. Holy shit. I saw a video about some girl falling through it and it still scares me. Yeah. That's not nearly as dumb of a belief as we all want it to be. I remember reading about that incident and seeing the video and realizing that childhood fear wasn't as irrational as I had thought. An island was a giant piece of land floating in the ocean. I used to want to see under islands. The moon was following me. When my daughter was 4, she asked me if the sky at home is the same as the sky at school. That actually seems like some pretty cool critical thinking. That I was the only one in the world with actual thoughts and feelings and everyone else was just part of my reality. Oh dear. You might wanna sit down for this one. My brother is quite a few years older than me and liked to tell me little fibs all the time. Some of the more memorable ones include him telling me that our uncle invented hamburgers and that lemonade has a little bit of cowpea in it. I thought my TV was too small to see adults in shows like Tom and Jerry and the Powerpuff Girls. I thought Barbara Bush was Eve from the Bible. The news said she was the first lady, and I didn't know what else that could mean. And she did look pretty old from my perspective. That all dogs are male and all cats are female. I thought this, and also that sharks were male and dolphins were female. I thought that cows were female and horses were male, but don't know if that was a common one. I thought foie gras was the fake grass they put in Easter baskets. I thought this, even when I went into high school. I thought people hated it because it was a messy and useless waste. Like, I honestly just thought vegans were assholes who hated Easter. I thought the term wind chill factor was windshield factor. Like the weatherman was letting you know if you needed to scrape your windshield in the morning. I thought that too. I mean, I'd heard the word windshield before. To microwave something you had to put in a code that corresponded with the time. I was really confused when I found out you just entered the time. First, you technically weren't wrong. Second, why did you make your account? That I was gonna be happy when I grew up. Hey, I hope you find happiness in whatever way it comes. Thank you, kind stranger. Likewise, if you haven't already. When I was like 4 or 5, I used to think that when a toy commercial said batter is not included, it meant batter is not required. It often used it as a selling point to convince my mom to buy it for me. Mom, it even says batter is not included. /view 200D. After 9/11 I thought we were going to have to invite Al-Qaeda over to America for the fight. And they were going to invite us over there to fight. And all the civilians would have to hide in basements while the fighting went on. Being fired at work meant you were actually incinerated. I was around 4 or 5, and from my understanding humans were monkeys in the very beginning. I got into a huge argument with a classmate because I was convinced we developed as monkeys in our mother's womb and eventually grew into humans before being born. I thought it was called global warming and not warming. Similar but dumb. I thought the world used to be black and white. It was. It changed right in the middle of The Wizard of Oz. It's on video. I used to think that Michael Jackson invented color on cameras in one of his music videos that goes from black and white to color. That my mom's name was actually Mom. My youngest was like 3, and we realized she thought that I was only mom to her, and I'm not entirely sure why she thought my son lived with us too. But finding out I was also mom to her brother was really traumatic. It's like we were taking something away from her. She was losing her mommy. If he called me mommy too, he called me mom, and I guess that wasn't the same thing. Lol. I'm honestly curious about this kind of territorial thinking. My own brother will say my mom, even if he's talking to me. And my aunts and uncles do the same thing about their parents. That when I turned 10, I would be able to see Pokemon in the world. My 10th birthday was a little disappointing. I thought condoms were something you inserted into the penis hole. Oh, my aunt got a condom plant gag gift at her birthday party when I was like 9. And it had fake condoms on stalks. I thought the stalks were part of it. So in other words, the rolled up condom part with a stalk, and you just stuck the stalk into the urethra with the rolled up flat part on the end. My parents used to say they worked to make money, so I thought their job was actually printing money. The concept of time zones didn't occur to me as a kid, so I used to think that it was always the same time across the world. I live in Eastern time zone and my extended family all lived in Central time zone. When TV channels would say 8/7C, I would think I would get to see the program an hour ahead of my cousin. And then she would see the same program and exact same commercial an hour later. I was very unsure that anyone else had consciousness. It seemed more likely that everything I experienced only existed in my imagination. I thought clouds were made by a huge cloud factory. I was real disappointed when they taught us in school that clouds weren't solid and you can't sit on them. I was disappointed when I found out stars weren't really star-shaped. That people would come in the night and cut off any appendages not covered by blankets. I conveniently convinced myself heads didn't count because that would be too gross. Yep, while sleeping I kept my toes covered no matter what. Did it well into my 30s. That ships were precariously balanced so that when they hit it with a bottle of champagne, that's what would send it backing into the water. Erasers. Made of rubber. Rubber comes from trees. ROOTS equals RUBBER. Pencil lead, graphite, can be converted to diamonds under intense heat and pressure. Because of this I assumed you would never find diamonds in the dirt near trees because the roots rubber would have erased them. Just kissing a boy or sleeping together in the bed will result in me giving birth in the next month. This is the same with me. I got scared when I was younger that when I slept in the same bed as my twin sister that she would get pregnant. I was like 9. I didn't know turn signals were manual. I thought the car just knew where we were going. I like this one. It's a cause and effect issue. I remember wondering if the tree branches moved to create the wind, or did the wind move the tree branches? I used to think germaphobes were just people scared of Germans or Germany. I mean, my first grade German teacher was so scary that when I once saw her at a restaurant as an adult, I immediately left. And am also a bit of a germaphobe, so you may be onto something. My dad convinced me that before Kodak invented color drops for your eyes, the world was all black and white, and that's why old films are in black and white. Him going to share all my personal information on an online platform one day. Oh wait. When I was a kid they told you not to use your real name in your email. I thought salt and pepper cancelled each other out. That is, if you oversalted something, adding pepper would return it to normal. I hope you didn't learn that the hard way. Worst bite ever. That a pipe dream had something to do with Mario Brothers. I thought a salad bar was like a candy bar, like all of the ingredients of a salad smashed into a bar that you held in your hand and ate. Not being snarky, but I really believed that the government would always work things out or figure everything out for the greater good. I still remember the look of pity my dad gave me when I said that. He looked at me and I was like, what? That's all fine. So long as you remember that the invisible hand of the market won't work everything out for the best either. Believing in that fairy tale is no less childish. I always thought that after I went to bed my parents stayed up for hours talking about me. Turns out, they were much too tired for that. That's why as kids we are not interested in what our parents do during the day. If it doesn't involve me, then why discuss it? I thought that sex was boring because my concept was a dude sticking it in a woman and just leaving it in overnight. Like the sperm loads like a computer file. Ooh babe, you're making me so hot tonight. Download complete tiny storage device can now be safely removed from the girlfriend. For a few seconds after you spit you can taste what it lands on. I used to believe that people can only see if my eyes are open, so I try my best not to blink so people could see. I didn't know the difference between pedestrian and Presbyterian, so I thought you had to go to a different church if you didn't have a car. I thought the world was planned, but turns out it was all an accident and everyone's just pretending. Hence why religion is so prevalent. Comforting to know someone knows what the hell is going on. When I was a kid I thought the toilet seat was only to be used by girls, even when pooping. I thought actors performed the movie every time I put in the VHS tape. Me too. I remember how I tried to watch movies at night because I knew the actors were Americans and about the time zones. Lol. My dad told me shrimp were intelligent, didn't die when they were cooked, and still had their brains and nervous systems when they were served. I still cannot eat shrimp to this day. Holy shit on a shovel. You were basically living the Poplars episode of Futurama. That's horrifying. Yo, dad is either seriously ducked up in the head, or he's a major Futurama superfan, or both. That being an adult would be fun. Turns out I was wrong. I stood in front of fabric softeners at the grocery store today wondering if it's all worth it. I thought you had an adult name when you grow up. Pressing on an animal's stomach would make baby animals pop out. Well, maybe not baby animals, but something may pop out. I thought the Atari 2600, my first console, came out around 1984 to 85, since that is when we got it. In fact, I thought everything we had was the latest technology. When I grew up and learned more, I realized my dad had waited a while and we were a bit behind on current tech. We got our Atari around the same time. Or sometimes. I can't believe how good I was at it. I've tried playing the game several years later as an adult. Part of the reason they're so bad is because of how ridiculously difficult they were. I thought that a local anesthetic was one made on the premise, hence the name local, and it wasn't until I was nearly 20 when I found out the truth. I honestly thought that all hospitals had basements where they made some of the anesthetics. Like a brew pub for drugs, I suppose. In a way, that's what old crack houses are. Whenever me and my brother did something to an object that annoyed our parents, they would tell us not to do it because it would cause the object to burst into flames. Jiggling the doorstops, you'll burn the house down. Stacking too many books in a pile, cool fire hazard. Dorks. Sliding down the carpet stairs, friction is a bitch. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize that not everything that annoyed my parents guaranteed a fire. I thought up until like 3rd grade that we were only learning about one side of the earth and we'd learn about the other half in later grades. I didn't make the connection between the big flat roller map my teacher would pull down across the chalkboard in the round earth everyone kept talking about. I thought that if we had a larger TV I would be able to see more of the scene. But I also understood that if I saw more I would see the edge of the set, light rigging, etc. My son calls his taste buds taste bugs. He stays his bugs and my bugs just like different stuff. I can't bring myself to correct him. That since Denver was called the Mile High City and airplanes flew a mile up in the air, that the airplane would just land in Denver up in the sky, or could run into Denver if they weren't careful. Could run into Denver if they weren't careful I mean. I guess this isn't technically false. Just not as cool as you thought it was. My older brother had me convinced that my grandmother flew away, died, when a tornado ripped the roof off her house. We live in Florida, but he definitely had me convinced it was not a hurricane, but a tornado. I didn't find out the truth until I was in high school and wrote a story about it for school. My mom was horrified. I guess no one really talked about how she died because she drank herself to death. The phrase "the coast is clear," I always thought it was "the ghost is clear." The phrase never made sense cause I'm a dumbass and misheard for so long. When we first moved to the United States, my illiterate self thought that foggy meant there's army men outside. I pronounced foggy like fodgy, which is army men in Urdu. I used to think that everybody starts out as a boy in the womb, and if the mom's body decides to birth a girl it will chop the dick off somehow. Turns out it's the opposite. Fun fact: this is why men have nipples. Biological sex differentiation doesn't happen until after nipples have formed. That when ordering through the drive-thru there were people who sat in the box and took your order through the box. I thought you could talk to the news people through the TV. I wish I would have thought of telling my little brother this. It's called Jack in the Box, Jimmy. Why do you think that is? My babysitter convinced me and my younger brother that if we ate too many sweets, ants would come and eat us alive. Was deathly afraid of natural disasters like tornadoes and volcanoes from Nat Geo documentaries I used to watch. Turns out we don't get many of them here in Australia. Do get a fair bit of bushfires and cyclones however. Yay. I DK about you guys. But here in the US, in the 90s, when I was a kid, there were initiatives meant to get kids involved in global issues like global warming and acid rain. All it did was ducking scummy for life. I thought drinking and driving applied to drinking anything until I was like 8 or 9. I used to get really upset when my mom would drink coffee in the car in the morning when she was dropping me off at schools. I still have a super vivid memory of seeing a man drinking a McDonald's milkshake in his car while he was driving down the street and being in near tears because I thought he was being reckless. Good times. Deer cross at the yellow signs, like a crosswalk for wildlife. That bubbles in the lake were fish farts. Not me, but my younger sister. When she was 7 or 8, she thought that the sun and moon were the same thing. She only realized they weren't the same thing after asking what that small white circle was next to the big yellow circle in the sky during the day. When I was about 5 these black things would be in my milk. It looked normal to me, so I just drank it. Turns out it was ants. Once I turned the lights off downstairs. I had to hurry up and get upstairs. If I didn't get upstairs quickly enough, glow-in-the-dark mummies were going to come out of the VCR. That my grandpa grew watermelons. Found out a couple years ago he never did. He would just put them on the ground where his garden was and said he grew them. The loud toilets at elementary school would set off the loud fire alarm. My brother told me Pluto was made of ice cream. I believed it for a long time and hoped to go there one day. I really wanted to learn how to whistle, and both my mum and uncle could both do it crazy loud. One night at dinner they told me I should eat my peas because peas make you better at whistling. I believed them, and for majority of my life I thought peas made you good at whistling, similarly to how carrots help you see in the dark. This may also be false though. It wasn't until a year or 2 ago when I repeated that at the dinner table and mum laughed and told me she just said that to get me to eat my peas. Carrots improving your eyesight was actually a propaganda spread by the British government during the war to distract enemies from the fact they had a radar and could therefore know when enemy planes were coming regardless of weather/sighting condition. So yeah. Sorry, lied to twice, haha. I thought Y's were fancy G's and spelled my name with a Y for almost 3 months in kindergarten because I wanted to be fancy. I thought you could measure how big your large intestine is by looking at the diameter of your poop. My older brothers had me absolutely convinced that broccoli was miniature trees that were shrunk by a laser beam. I believed that until I was like 9. My parents told me that cicadas were tree frogs, and I believed this was literally true for an embarrassingly long time. My father told me that green olives with pimento were frog eyes. It was years before I knew the difference. Elite olives now, but I think there is still some deep-rooted thoughts there preventing me from fully enjoying them. I had a stuffed elephant from the UK that I think my mom got from visiting family there, and I'd DK if it came with glitter. But I got it with glitter and was told it was fairy dust. If I put the elephant on a surface and sprinkled some fairy dust on it, it'd get an egg in the morning. I even did it at a friend's house and it worked, making me believe in it for too long. My friend just tricked me too, which was upsetting to find out. My brother taught me how to play chess, and the different colored pieces could make different moves. The colors, not the pieces. That the world would be better in the future. I don't know about the future, but living right now, at least in the first world, it's objectively better for the vast majority of the population than it was at any point in history, if you consider things like medical advances and even basic sanitation. I used to think the word oblivious was a synonym for the word obvious, in the same way that irregardless is related to regardless. At some point I said something along the lines of, well, it obliviously wasn't me, or something to that effect, to one of my parents who had to explain what that word meant. When I was really young, I thought that Propel would age differently and randomly. So for example, I thought I was born, then I was 2 the next year, then 5. And I thought only some people were 1 and 3, 4 at some point. Don't know if this makes sense. That once you reached the age of 100 you just kinda died. My mom highly contributed to all stupid things I thought as a kid. She told me that I should not cry because the cops would arrest children if they saw them crying. I believed this lie very much, that whenever I would cry, I hide somewhere and sob quietly. This habit carried on till adulthood. I already found out that the arresting part isn't true, of course, but not letting other people to see my crying made my depression worse. I thought that pee was stored in your leg, and that when your toes get cold you have to go. No idea why I thought that, but to this day, when I have to pee my toes get cold. I thought that the kissing in marriage ceremonies was what caused children. That the hills and mountains we drove through were sleeping dinosaurs. They could wake up at any moment and eat us. No one knew when it would happen, but it was definitely going to happen one day. But we had to take a chance to get where we were going. There was no other way. I was terrified as a kid every time we drove through them. Thank you to my loving sadistic older brother. I used to believe that the news media workers voted for the bad politicians so that they have more news to cover. That our family members that have died can look down from us from the sky and see everything we do. However, I thought I could get away with being naughty because they wouldn't be able to tell anyone on earth. I used to think that when people moved houses they just switched houses with the person selling the home. There's some decent sized mountains behind my old house, and I always thought that if I were to go over these mountains I would be in China. I thought sex was just when a mommy and a daddy, not two people who weren't parents, hugged naked. I had no concept of the difference between male and female reproductive organs. When I found out, I was shocked. Couldn't believe it. Horrified me. As a kid I could never figure out who was related to who in my family. I have a huge family and my grandparents, aunties and uncles all have these friends that they've known since they were kids, so when everyone's at a family function there was usually 150 plus people and I could never work out how or if I was related to certain people. 20 years later, and I'm still not really sure. You get taller when you're an adult. I was completely wrong. Girls must pee out their butthole because they don't have a penis. I thought that Pokemon cards had actual Pokemon in them, and when you battle, they'd come out and do their thing. Very disappointing first deck. That my country was bigger than the rest of the world. I used to think that your hair was all one giant strand of hair woven throughout your scalp. My sister, 22-year-old, recently confessed that up until a couple of years ago she thought fingernails grew from the top because you cut off the white tip and it grows back there. I thought that the sun wouldn't come up unless you went to sleep, So I really believed that if you stayed awake forever, the sun would never come up. I thought strawberry blonde literally meant pink hair. I didn't come from a sports watching family and I always avoided ESPN because I thought it stood for Espanol and I don't speak Spanish. 24 years old and just learned 3 months ago that ponies are not baby horses. Even with proof I actually still can't believe it. When I was 6, I thought my mom got pregnant by kissing her boyfriend. When I saw her kissing him, I told her she would have a baby again. Suddenly 3 months later she tells us she's having our little brother. I didn't learn differently until 7th grade in health class. I thought blowjob means a woman would literally blow into your penis and inflate your balls. 18 is a magical gate threshold where money starts flowing. You're no longer bound by any rules. You can do whatever you please all day, and you will answer to no one but yourself. Babies came out of the butt. I learned the truth at 12. Twins are made by the dad leaving the penis in the vagina for twice as long. Superheroes were real. Blame that one on my brother though. Parents have babies by sitting together, side by side or facing each other, and thinking about getting pregnant. That for a child to be born, the woman gives birth and the male gets a surgery in which they take a part of his testicle and join it with what comes out the mother. I thought that the blinking arrow that shows up on a car's dashboard told the driver where to go, sort of like a GPS. Good thing I figured out it was just the turn signal before I started driving. I thought my grandma died Hansel and Gretel style, cooked in the oven. It was an asthma attack, but I believed it until I was 10. Oh yeah, I used to think David Beckham and David Cameron was the same man. That women only had 2 holes, a vagina and a butthole. As a kid, I thought that anytime you buy something at a shop with cash, the shopkeeper always has to give you some money in return. My stupid self never understood the concept of change, or simply paying the whole amount without any change expected. /view 200B. I thought the teachers lived at the school. That parents actually cared for their kids because of compassion. When we were learning about drugs and learning about marijuana was a plant, I thought that it grows anywhere, so I looked in my backyard because I didn't want to get in trouble. When I was a kid, maybe 6 to 8, I thought sex was rubbing the dick against the ass. I also thought you can impregnate a woman by kissing them. I'm so dumb back in the day. When I was really little, we lived in a small town close to a good sized mountain that you could see from almost anywhere in the county. I always thought it was Mount Everest. When you were born, you lived in an apartment for the first year or 2. My parent lived in an apartment that was right down the street from the hospital, so that's just what I thought. I was probably 10 watching a baby story on TLC when the parents came home to a house. I was so confused and stupid. When I was really young, before I knew what periods were, I saw those pads and tampons commercials and thought that they were for when women peed themselves. I thought it was illegal to turn on lights inside the car at night while driving. I questioned death a lot, so my dad told me that people had to die and go to heaven so the earth wouldn't get too heavy and sink. I bought it, lol. Video games were movies that the creators somehow knew what you would do when they made them, and make a movie that would exactly match what you did with the controller. They would then make sure that that specific game would be in the right store at the right time for your parents to buy. I had no idea women had nipples when I was younger and always assumed boobs looked more like balloons. I used to believe England wasn't a real place. All the other countries were real, but England wasn't to me. I thought sitcoms had their name because the characters were usually sitting down, unlike in stand-up comedy. I thought that when I was on a plane I would have seen the writing on the countries that you see on a map. I thought that every country is on its own planet. When I was 2 or 3 years old and in kindergarten, I saw that boys look different naked when we played in the little pool outside. So I started waiting for this funny thing to grow between my legs too. I thought eventually everyone would grow one. I was very disappointed when I asked my mum about it and she explained that was not how it worked. Today I'm happy it didn't though. That being an adult meant you got to do whatever you want, whenever you want. That you can only have sex laying down flat. I was very confused when my schoolmate told me people are having sex in the toilet cabins. I imagined how their feet would stick out under the door, their head next to the toilet, which was gross. Why I thought that? Well, my primary school teacher explained insemination using the example of a water can. In Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I thought Veruca Salt's name was Rutabaga Salt. I also thought that God could make a woman pregnant when he knew they were ready to raise a baby. When I watched something on TV, I thought all the actors would perform the episode live on air. I thought this for both animated and live action shows. I thought the other side of the world was exactly the same as it is where I was, and there was someone exactly opposite of me. I always wondered if I would meet that version of me. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.